Hi, my name is Sage, and this week I decided I wanted to make some paper mache forest friends. As you can see here, I sketched them all out. I will not be making the seedling because he just didn't fit on my little wooden board thing. So without further ado, let's get started. And first things first, I'm gonna need some tin foil, and I'm gonna scrunch that up into a little ball, and then I'm gonna keep scrunching more tin foil up top of that ball to make a bigger ball, as this will be the acorn. And you would really think making an acorn out of tin foil would not be a hard task, but boy was I wrong. This is a very much trust the process because it doesn't look right. Like right now, what is this? Look how sad he is. He doesn't even have a face, and I can see the frown. But you know what fixes a frown? Getting thicker. Ooh, I love pasta. So now that he's nice and thick, I then take my ball stylus and hit him numerous times. In my mind, it's helping him be super smooth. But then I move on to giving him his hat, because acorns have like a hat up top their head. You know what I'm saying? Here's a picture. So then I embark on my journey of making him a hat, before then taking my ball stylus and go wham bam and making it somewhat smooth. Before then, deciding to give him some pasta to make him thicker. He didn't really get any pasta, but I ate pasta the other day and it was pretty good. Now I'm off to my next step, which is to get some wire and then cut it and then not measure anything because I don't do math on this channel. And these wires will be his legs. Ooh. I then wrap the wires with some tinfoil at the very end of them, as these will be his feet. I then get this brilliant idea that I should hot glue his legs to his body, and that totally does not come back to bite me. His limbs totally do not fall off later. They're fine. So now that the legs are just so sturdy, I then add on the arms using boop, a transition. I do the exact same thing, use the wire and tinfoil and hot glue. And what magical acorn with limbs would be complete without a magical walking stick? So that's what I make next, and I use the tinfoil and wire. And to make the branchy parts that come off of the walking stick, I just twist the tinfoil and it kind of looks like a little branch. So everything worked out. So now that these two are completely done, it's now time to move on to making a rock. And I do that by squishing some tinfoil together, and then I just keep doing that numerous times until I get to the correct size that I want it to be, but it won't be complete until I take my ball stylus and hit it a few times. So now that my rock be looking like a rock, I then add some limbs. Ooh, and by limbs I mean arms. So now he kind of looks like Geodude's flattened cousin, but that's okay. We love all rocks here. Then I get my wooden base from the dollar store, not sponsored, and I realize I'm running out of space real quick. So my tree has to really be, you know, not too big. Like think like a Charlie Brown tree, but not at the exact same time. And here I'm adding the limbs to the tree the exact same way that I added the limbs to the magical staff. I'm just kind of twisting the tin foil up top of itself because it just makes sense. I then make his head a little bit taller before then going in and adding the roots. And with the roots, I just take small pieces of tin foil, scrunch it all up, and then use the hot glue. And the hot glue came in clutch here, 10 out of 10 hot glue, and attach them at the bottom. So now he looks like all kind of creepy and wonderful and cute all at the exact same time. And this is what they all look like. They're all ready to get paper mache now. This is what my paper mache looks like, and the ingredients are on the screen. Pause if you want to read it. And now the quest to paper mache everything is underway. So what I do to start is to take my little paintbrush and then paint on the paper mache, and then put the newspaper up top of it, and then put more paper mache up top of that, so it's kind of like sandwiched in. And then I just continue this method until everything is paper mached. Ooh, and one thing that I wanted to mention as well, so you know the newspaper clippings that you saw earlier? I didn't cut them, I ripped them, because I learned that the paper is way easier to form when it's a ripped edge compared to the harsh cut edge. And I just found that to be a really useful tip, so I just ripped everything up. There are some straight edges, but that's just because that's where the newspaper was cut itself. But it was a really good tip and it really did work. And now you're probably thinking to yourself, Sage, didn't you allude that all of his limbs gonna fall off? And yes, They do, and they did. But it ended up being actually a good thing in the end because now I can paint the limbs without worrying that they're just gonna plop off. So you know what? We win some and you lose some. And he lost some limbs, but he'll get them back, so it's okay. And since he was so damp because I go overboard, I then take some paper towel and dab him all up so he has an easier time to dry. So then I set him aside and I start to paper mache the magical walking stick, ooh. And you may be like, oh my goodness, this is so much paper macheing, right? That is correct. So now it's transition time. So here's a rock, wha-bam. Now he's macheed, and then wha-pow. Now he's papered. And with the power of editing, you've guessed it, the tree, bam! Now he's completely paper macheed. So now it's time to wait until the next day when everything is all dry. Now it's the next day when everything is completely dried. I know it looks like a pile of garbage, but it's my pile of garbage and it's gonna look beautiful once it's all done. And the first step of beautifying everything is, you probably guessed it, painting. And I start by painting the acorn and I use an umber brown color. Before then mixing the umber brown with some titanium white to do his little hat. And you may be wondering, hey Sage, why is your paintbrush so tiny? Is it because you ripped out the stem part because it kept hitting the camera? You guessed correctly if you guessed that. And here I'm going in with just the umber brown to paint his limbs, and I do a transition, so now they're all magically painted. And here I was honestly thinking to myself, I'm not gonna paint like the arm part, you know, like the wire part. And then I thought to myself, you know what, that's stupid. I'm gonna paint everything because I thought that the wire wouldn't even take to the paint. Turns out it took perfectly. I did not need to scratch it up or anything. So yay! Next, I begin to paint the tree and I go in with the umber brown as well, just for the base coat because I will be doing a few colors to make it look all nice and wooden. And now that he's nice and umber, I then go in with a sepia-like color and then dab in wherever there's some white spots just to make sure that everything is nice and covered, before then going in with some umber brown and titanium white mixed up. And as you can tell, I go in a little heavy with the white before then mixing a little bit more umber brown in, and I'm just dry brushing it as well just to make sure that it hits all of the lumpy parts that I want to be more pronounced. So now that he is looking great, I'm then gonna set him aside and start to work on the magical staff. And since I still had a little bit more paint left over from the umber brown and sepia and white titanium, I go over that with the magical staff before then thinking to myself, you know what would really make it magical? Gold. And so the journey to turn this magical staff gold begins, and honestly I only needed one layer of gold, which was so much fun because whenever I use this gold paint on clay it takes like 6 layers, so I was excited. But now I move on to painting Geodude's weird cousin, and I start by doing the first layer in black paint, before then dry brushing some gray paint that I mixed myself up top of it, just to again make everything all nice and pronounced in certain areas, as this will just make it look more rocky. And now that he's all done, I then move on to painting the base, and I paint it brown because that just made sense in my head because I'm going to be putting moss up top of it later. But he's still a little damp, so I set him aside and move on to the next part, which is painting little faces on all my little guys. And I do so by taking a small paintbrush, dipping it in black paint, and making 2 circles, well, more like ovals, for the eyes, and then making a half circle for the smiling face. Then, since I'm a little bit impatient, I don't wait for everything to completely dry, but they were dry enough, and I go in with the white paint with a smaller brush and then put little glistenings in all of their eyes, before then taking a little bit of pink paint and giving them some little blushes, as well as giving them a tongue in their mouth so it really looks like they're all happy. And now it's limb reattachment time, and I decide to do the exact same thing as I did the very first time and go in with the hot glue. Why did I do this? I don't know, I wasn't thinking. And as you can guess, the legs just completely fell off. And now he's also not painted in some spots now too, so it's a disaster. So now we have to bring out the big dogs, and by big dogs, I mean the Gorilla Glue. The Gorilla Glue, it never fails me, and it didn't fail me this time either. Ooh, it just comes in clutch. So now I go around and just start reattaching his limbs one by using the Gorilla Glue, and guess what? They're solid. Ooh, it may have taken a very long time for it to set, but when it did, solid. So now this is what everything looks like. They're all happy and wonderful, but then I get the realization, if I'm going to put moss on the base, that would imply that it's like summer/springtime, and my tree is bald. Oh no. So now I decided to take a leaf that I got from the dollar store and hot glue it on the top of his head, because that makes it all the better. So now that he's leaf head, I can then hot glue them all to the base. And you may be like, Sage, didn't the hot glue gun fail you numerous times? It did, but I still believe in it, and it did a great job at adhering them to the base, so I'm not mad at all. So then the next thing that I work on is gluing on the moss, and I got this moss from the dollar store, not sponsored. And if you've seen any one of my other videos, I've used different moss in the past, but I really like this moss because it stayed all nice and clumped together. So then I just continue gluing until everything's all nice and mossy. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and now it's time for the glamour shots.